Awesome, man. Super stoked to be doing this with you today. I know we chat all the time, and your approach is so phenomenal because of the confidence that you bring to what you do and the fact that you overcome objections that sometimes we face, and you don't even face them because you power through them. And then obviously the way we teach is a little bit more about like finessing objections. And so what I want to do today is talk about how you go through listing presentation objections, how we do it, and then basically to give both of our audiences best of both worlds, right? Maybe when and how to power through these objections, and when and how to use story and finesse, to set the stage and have better results. So that being said, what I want to do is I want to start off by asking some questions. I know that you're going on all these listing presentations. You probably get asked all the time, Chris, what do you do differently?
So the great question. I do get asked that all the time. And the first, immediately when I'm asked that question, I'm almost offended by the question. Now, I don't, so you gotta, there's a way to put that out there, right? So like, what do you do different? And I almost look at them like I do everything different. and just so you know, so obviously I'm going into a listing presentation with an expired or canceled listing most of the time. So I've got no, this isn't it, but I'll have the sheet in front of me as to what the other agent did. So I've almost got a cheat sheet as to what to be able to pick apart that the other agent did wrong. So that's very helpful. So, what do I do different? I do everything different. And look, I can see here that you were on the market for, and again, I'm redirecting the conversation. I'm diffusing what they just said to me because they just tried to take the power away from me, right? Yeah. So I'm taking the power back. I do everything different. And it looks like you were on the market for, 60 days. I specialize in finding the one buyer on planet Earth that's willing to pay more than anybody else. And here's how I do it. And then I go right into how I do that. So, I do have a very systemized process that I work through, but the rebuttal for that always, for the most part is because look, there are certain things that are the ante, right? You're going to have professional pictures. You're going to have a listing video. You may have a 3D Matterport. You may do postcards. Those are all the things that every successful agent does for the most part. So look, we've got a Facebook guru, we've got a Google guru, and to be honest, it's a little bit outside my pay grade how they do it, but what they do is they get our marketing and they put it directly in front of the one buyer that's looking for a property like yours in Boynton Beach with a pool, whether they're in Alaska or mainland China, we're going to find them. They're going to click on our ad, and within 5 minutes or less, someone from our team is going to reach out to them, connect with them. And once we've got your data, we've got your email address, we've got your cell phone, then we're going to harass you until you buy something or die. And then I just go on to the next item of business within my listing presentation. So you address the rebuttal, you go on to, and then you close.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you deliver that with such confidence, right? And I think that's the key. I mean, if someone is taking your lines, they're writing them down, they're delivering them, but they don't deliver them with the confidence you just did, it's not going to go the same way.
Right.
That's what's so phenomenal is like, the way you present is like there's no other thought that you could have, right? I mean, like you are 100% confident in yourself that you are giving them the best result, period.
Yeah, and you know what? That just comes from practice, right? So yeah. I think the most important thing that anybody can do is get a lot of reps in front of sellers, right? Yeah. And practice delivering those lines. So, and it turned, they're not really lines. It's the truth. This is what I'm going to do, period. Yeah. So you don't want to even overthink it. What am I going to do differently? Everything. Yeah. And then next.
And like you said, and this is important, with this air of, I'm offended you would even ask, like, have you not already been entertained with the marketing plan I showed you? Right.
Right.
Attitude.
But listen, all of these things are you're from the minute you walk into the listing presentation, and it's a curated event. You're dressed a certain way. You everything that I do, and I'm sure that you do, is very intentional. Yeah. So by the time they ask that question, if they ask that, and actually everybody asks it, but they're almost they're asking because they know they have to, but it's so much, you've already won them over in so many ways prior to that, that this is just like a softball that you hit out the park.
Yeah.
Because everybody's going to ask them, what do you do different? Everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say you list out these things, and let's say you're presenting to a high analytical, which in my opinion are the hardest ones always, because they're reserved, they want to think about things and so on and so forth. So they say, well, yeah, I mean, Chris, but that's what everybody said. I mean, everybody's got this, like you mentioned, they're all doing the video, they're all doing this. I mean, really, like, what makes you different?
Well, look, I can, first of all, I'm sure you've interviewed lots of agents, and anybody can say anything, period. We all know that. But the reality of it is we specialize in finding the one buyer on planet Earth that's willing to pay more than anybody else. If you notice, it's the same thing that I just said to the other thing. All I'm doing is addressing what they say and then directing them back into address the rebuttal and then close, right? So that's what everybody says. Look, I know that's what everybody says, but the reality of it is I probably taught them what to say. Just so you know, I am I'm networked throughout the country. I actually have a coaching platform where I go out there and I teach realtors from around the world on a daily basis how to go out there and prospect and have success. So it wouldn't shock me if they actually learned that whatever they said from me. But look, at the end of the day, the reality of it is you want to sell your home, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And the reality of it is you want to get the most possible for your house, correct? Yes. Okay. Well, that's what we do. Are you ready to list?
Yeah. Boom. So let's take these objections in a couple of different directions too, and kind of get your answers on these. So for example, let's say you're going up against a team that's doing 200 to 300 deals, right? How do you address that? Someone says, hey, look, Chris, I mean, what you're saying looks good. I mean, but how many deals do you sell? I mean, I've been interviewing teams that are doing like 300 transactions.
Well, it's interesting because I have this happen, quite often now. And there are some dominant agents that are in my market space that I find myself going up against on a regular basis. And it's something that people ask, so how do you address, look, the reality of it is, you're not going to make a bad choice because, they're doing 300 deals or whatever it is. I can't compete with that. I've never sold 300 homes in a year. I just haven't done it. Not yet. I will. I'm trending that way. So you're not going to make a bad decision. But here's what we do differently. And look, you're going to get individualized attention from me, and not just me, but also from my staff. We've got a full-time buyer's agent. We have a full-time transaction coordinator. We have a full-time marketing person. It is a comprehensive team approach. And the reality of it is we are going to treat you with white glove service. So you're going to get a weekly update from us on Monday, on Wednesday, and anytime there's anything in between where it's relevant for us to talk, you're going to hear from myself or somebody on my team. We're going to be able to service you in a way that no other team or mega agent or whatever it might be can do. Are you ready to list?
Yeah. Awesome. I mean, this is fantastic. And for those out there listening, like if they can get even close to your level of confidence and deliver these lines, they're going to do well in listing presentations.
100%.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I also think is critical for I don't think there are enough closers out there. I don't think there are enough people who are actually trained in sales. So, it doesn't take much to get a real estate license, but to actually be able to sell somebody is a totally different thing. So I think people really need to go. For me, I can tell you what I used to spend, probably hundreds of hours tape recording myself, writing out each sentence, practicing the inflection of going down with my words, going up with my words, practicing inflection, everything. And I think that it's important for people to spend that kind of time. I used to pitch myself in the mirror for hours. It's attention to detail. You've got to do that in order to be the best.
That's phenomenal, right? And that's a difficult journey too, because some people are a little bit more naturally assertive than others. Some people have a softer personality. What would you say? Before you morphed into this, beast of a caller, what was your personality like? Just normal, before you got in the calling world.
So I've always been hyper competitive. I was the kid in high school that probably shouldn't have In fact, to bring it way back, I think I weighed 135 pounds when I started to play football in high school. And they had this big meet, which is not very big.
Of course not, yes.
Yeah. So they had this big meeting, and they said, write down on an index card what position you're going to play. And I just wrote starting running back.
Yeah.
And handed it in. And everybody read, they read it in front of a group, and I was a freshman. And so I remember I actually got my ass kicked, to be honest with you, for doing that. Not only did I get my ass kicked, I got my shoes stolen.
Wow.
But my point was, whatever the hardest challenge was, I wanted to meet that head on. And I've always been competitive that way. So my personality has always been, look, I might not start out the best, but I'm going to work my ass off to get to be the best at whatever I can be.
That's phenomenal. Oh, dude, I want to hear the end of the story, man. So did you end up playing running back, or what ended up happening?
Well, no, I didn't. I basically got my ass kicked that entire freshman season. But, by the time senior year came, I ended up being all city or whatever it was. And, and doing far more than I ever should have, based on my, physical talents. I just, I was the guy who was running up bridge embankments to challenge myself. I was the guy who was in the weight room, getting every extra rep I could get in to be the best I could possibly be.
That's phenomenal. So start to tell me about your journey. So you're in high school, your competitive drive is just innate in you, right? You obviously carried that out on the sports field, but where did that take you? Where did you go after high school, and how did your journey progress?
So I went to school at Florida Atlantic University, kind of got distracted with women and alcohol and trouble and all kinds of other things like that. So, I was not an academic, right? For a period of time, I worked with my father, who had his own company, and I could tell that wasn't the right fit for me either. Yeah. So I found myself kind of in a transitional spot where I wasn't sure what I was going to do next. And my dad, who I've always had a pretty good relationship with, said, Chris, I really think you've got a talent at sales. You should go out there and just interview at some jobs and just give me a list of ideas, right? Yeah. This is back in the early 90s. So I went on the classifieds, and that's exactly what I did. I just looked through the classifieds. And the ad, I think it was, are you aggressive? Are you interested in unlimited earning potential? And that's all I really needed to see. So I went on in my first interview, actually. I went in, and it was for a stockbroker training. And the guy who I met with.
It's like straight Wolf of Wall Street stuff, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, I didn't know it at the time, but this is 100% exactly Wolf of Wall Street. Like, this is the firm I was with was one of Jordan Belfort's proteges. So okay. In Boca Raton at that point, these were like popping up everywhere. And so it was, now I didn't know any of this. I just knew that the guy that I met, who I thought was, I just looked at this guy and I'm like, if this idiot's doing it, I know I can make a lot of money. But he showed me his check for, I think he made $200,000 that month. Wow. And I looked at this and I'm like, whatever it is, I'm in 100%. Yeah. And so that little incubator was far and away the best sales training that there is on the planet. It was also a lot of other things. It was horribly abusive and very insane. Yes. But I was able to survive that and move on to other things, but that training, was priceless.
So kind of walk me through, obviously there's, examples out there that people have seen because of, Jordan Belfort becoming more out in the media and understood. But kind of walk me through like what they would do to train you, what your schedule was like.
Wow. So the mindset and the intensity and the culture of these boardrooms was so hyper competitive that people would literally fight for a phone. there were people lined up.
It's hard to imagine. Most real estate agents and real estate teams have trouble getting their agents to call at all. You're having to fight for your right to call.
There were you had to fight for your desk space. You had to fight for your phone. You had to, it was a really aggressive, super macho, call boiler room. That's what it was. And it was to the point where, people, you probably get thrown in jail these days, but it was not uncommon to have phones duct taped to hands. It was not uncommon for people to, not even have a chair. You weren't allowed to have a chair. And there would be fights all day long within the, literally there would be fist fights, at least one a day, to be on the phone. And you were totally replaceable. So if you weren't willing,
you were ripped, right? You had to be to survive. It's like prison.
Yeah, but the other thing was, you also know that you were totally replaceable. So if you weren't willing to put in the time, you were just instantly fired. So there was no real long leash. It was just, all right, you don't want to do it, the next guy will.
So how in the world did they incentivize you guys? They got you hungry, they got you in the room, you're going after it. How did they do that?
Well, it's all based on money, right? So this is where things got a little, I didn't learn, in the moment, I didn't know what was going on. But a lot of these, there was just illegal stocks that were being sold. There were all kinds of tactics that were going on behind the scenes that we didn't know. I'm a young kid in there that's just soaking it all in. And I'm seeing people that are selling stock and making $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 in a month. I didn't really need to know anywhere else. But what I was able to differentiate quickly was that if it's too good, if it seems too good to be true, it actually is too good to be true. So in fact, almost everybody who was involved so there are two pieces. I learned a lot about phone sales, which was amazing. I also learned that, if you're buying these illegal stocks or whatever it is, you're also going to jail. So most of the people that were affiliated with any of that ended up going to jail and getting in a lot of trouble, and whatever the case might be. I realized the difference fast enough and didn't get involved with that, and ended up having an 18-year career as a legitimate stockbroker.
Nice.
But that's, I got myself to a point where I had an 18-year career, and the business model changed. So we went from, being able to buy and sell stocks, being a retail stockbroker, to everything went into a different direction, and almost all the tools that we were able to use to be a retail broker were taken away. So basically there was no more job. And when that happened, that's when I was like, okay, I'm getting married. This happened at the time where I was getting married, going to have a kid, realize this is, God telling me it's time for me to, find a new path. And that's when I got into real estate.
Yeah. So that's got to be a tough time. What's swirling through your mind? What sort of thoughts are you having as this is unfolding?
That's a great question. So, I kind of glossed over about an 18-year career there. So the early stages, the infancy stages of it, where I actually learned how to sell on the phone, was one thing. Then there was an 18-year career as a legitimate retail stockbroker. But I thought I had arrived. I thought that this was what I was going to do forever. I had a team. We were the top producing office in a nationwide firm. And so I was comfortable, and I don't want to say I wasn't lazy, but I was secure. Yeah. I was comfortable, and instantly that was taken away. So it was, when that happens, it's incredibly terrifying. It is the biggest mind fuck that I've ever had, pardon my French, but it was looking down it's like looking into the abyss. It's straight terror. So, and then coupled with that, as that was happening, I'm getting married, I'm going into this new career or starting a new family. My hip, which I had a hip replacement. Yeah. So my health failed. So it was this perfect storm of bad things that were happening, and it was a real challenge.
Wow. So, I mean, you go from this place of financial security and this is my goal. Like, I'm done, right? I just ride this out into retirement, so on and so forth. And all of a sudden you're starting over.
100%.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was incredibly frightening to have, responsibility and, 3 mouths to feed, a family to take care of. And then just there's the fear part of it, but there's also the humility part of it. Right. So to go from this spot mentally where you think you've arrived to you've got no money in the bank and now you're flirting with bankruptcy is not only terrifying, but it's also, it's emasculating. It's tough.
Yeah. Because your friends and everybody knows you as this big success.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, wow. It was tough. And I certainly, I needed a brand makeover anyway. So everything happens for a reason. And it worked out exactly the way it was supposed to.
Yeah.
So,
wow. Dude, I mean, I could literally dive into this part of the story for like hours, but just for the sake of getting through this thing, kind of take me back to, you're talking about having that boiler room experience. What are some things now that if you getting into real estate and if you were to build a sales team like that you would do that were legal and good to get people as trained as fast as possible and the confidence that you have and the skills that you have?
Well, that's what I'm in the process of doing right now. Yeah. Right. And so I think you've got to be able to provide an opportunity for somebody where that's unique and different to anybody else out there. So the reality of it is in the space we're in, we have an unlimited earning potential. Right. Yeah. So you've got to bring somebody in and let them see and know that that's true. So the only way that they're going to, in my opinion, the only way that that's going to happen is by them watching me do it myself. And so I try to make myself transparent to show people, hey, look, I went from the top of the mountain to the bottom of the mountain, and I'm on my way back up to the top of the mountain again. And I'm looking for teammates who want to climb up the mountain with me. Yeah. And that is, that's my mission.
That's awesome, man. So how long, when you were in that space, would you say it took for somebody that was 100% in and dedicated to skill building? How long on average does it take somebody to go from zero to decently successful?
In the stock brokerage community?
Yeah. Just in terms of skill
I think so. Well, let's put it this way. I think that someone who is all in and they're in the same position where I was, that they are fully committed and 100% in, I think I can train anybody over the course of 90 days to be absolutely phenomenal in sales and on the phone. But they got to be 100% all in.
Yeah. And I think we're seeing a lot of the same things for people that literally don't miss any of our role plays at all. Then they go out and execute by doing calls, 100 to 500 calls a day. And they're getting that practice and they're coming back to the role plays and you can hear that they were on calls because you could see the insight they had to the objections. And literally, people are posting results, right away. I know the same in your group. And but it's about 90 to 120 days where we're like, is this the same person?
Right.
And the thing that I love is we go about things so differently. You have just such confidence and just such a process to take somebody who, like you, is super competitive and make them, crazy, over the top and confident, Yeah. And I know we kind of do things a little bit more through story, but your story is powerful, man. It truly is. Just watching your journey. So kind of take me now from you make your heart set on real estate. Tell me has your journey been from there till now?
Okay. So, when I got my license and I partnered, I actually went out there and found one of the top sellers on Zillow and saw he was with Remax and reached out to him and asked to be his buyer's agent, essentially. And whatever, at that point now, I did a few things that I certainly, I guess I don't regret them now, but in retrospect, I would do them differently.
Yeah.
I was broken when I got into real estate, right? So physically I was broken, mentally I was broken. You see me as being very confident now, but at that point I wasn't. I was a shell of myself.
Yeah.
And I was just trying to find traction, right? So anyway, I partnered with this guy. And when I say partnered, I didn't partner with him. I was his buyer's agent. But anything that I was drinking the Kool-Aid, right? Yeah. There are a lot of people that say, don't try to recreate the wheel. Just take the system, take the process, and just run with it. So that's what I did. Anything that came at me, I was 100% all in. Leads are coming in at 11:30 at night, 12 o'clock at night. I'm responding within 5 minutes. I'm doing the best that I can possibly do to emulate and be a clone of the guy that I was working with.
Yeah.
That was a disaster. that was, not being true to who you are is a major mistake.
Agreed.
And I think just because of the confluence of other things that were going on, I didn't have my mojo. I didn't have my normal swagger. I was just, out on Hope Island looking for, I don't know what I was looking for. But anyway, I tried to do it his way and it wasn't working. Right.
So without going into too much detail and, and obviously remaining positive, tell me like some of the ways that you felt like you were pulling away from who you were and, those sort of things. Give us some of the details because I literally believe that people operating within their strengths is everything. Right. And we are all built and wired so differently. So I'd love to know who you are in relationship to what you were trying to become. And when you realize that,
I felt like I was being a glad handler. I felt like I wasn't, to my own, where I made a mistake, I was kind of taught that I'm like, look, just tell whatever it is that I need to do, whatever the system is, whatever the process is, just give me direction. And I wasn't getting any. Yeah. So I tried to do the best job that I possibly could to service the leads that were coming in, but I was doing it in a way that was just stupid, right? I wasn't really qualifying anybody. I was taking on business or taking on people that I never should have. I was saying yes to everybody, and I was running myself ragged. Yeah. And then when I asked was, because I started to look for coaching and help and whatever, I was told, well, that doesn't work. So at some point I'm like, all right, well, it might not work for you, but I need to get some help. And one of the things that I love is, so I created the group that I wish that I would have had.
Yes.
When I was starting out. Right.
Yeah. And which now like 4,000 people are a part of, which is incredible.
Right. So, but none of that stuff existed. So I found coaching, I found help, I found the system and process, and I found myself in that journey. In fact, I think you know the story, but I'll share it with you anyway. Yeah. I found myself out at Joshua Smith's in-person mastery alumni event, and I was there. Someone asked if there would be a volunteer to do a role play. So of course I raised my hand, and in front of the group, I went out there, and I thought I did really well, in this role play in front of 200 or 300 people. And then as I was walking back to my seat, I said to myself, why am I not doing this every day?
Yes.
And so that's when the bell went off, and that's when I made a commitment to myself. I'm going to do this every day. I'm going to do it live in a Facebook group. I'm going to I invited 2 people into the group, and then everything just kind of took off from there. So there's now 4,000 people in the group, and I've done it every day since then. It's a little bit over a year old.
It's insane, man. In a year, that's like 10 people. That's more than 10 people a day that are being exposed and getting training that you never had access to, which is just incredible.
And that's the cool thing. So, and you probably have this experience too, where people are coming back to me and saying, Chris, you've changed my life. You've helped me, my business has changed. My mindset has changed. Thank you so much. And, I'm so grateful to be able to do that. But the reality of it is with technology the way it is right now, to have an impact on so many people in a positive way, that is really, really cool.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to take some of your story, and I literally could spend another 5 hours on your story because it's rich. I mean, not only is it rich because you built some real skill sets that are applicable to how real estate works, but I mean, you've got some real ups and downs in your story. You know, I mean, you've had it all, you've lost it all, you've lived the American dream, and you know, now you've settled into a very successful real estate, you know, practice that you're building into a phenomenal team, and so on and so forth. So let's kind of bring it back to the listing presentation, and let's kind of bring in some elements of your story. Like, so for example, we're talking about, Chris, what is it that you do differently, right? So if we start to take your story, I want to kind of show you a little bit how this looks, right? Like when you say, I want to tell you a little bit about who I am, right? From a very young age, right? I was the most competitive kid on the planet, right? I was the guy, and you're just telling your story, I was the guy that literally at 135 pounds thought I was going to be the starting running back. And it literally took a bunch of seniors kicking my tail for me to realize that, okay, maybe I'm not going to be starting running back, but I'm going to be this, right? And then if you roll into your story about literally the stock brokerage world and how you're hustling, then when you talk about this is how I find the one buyer on planet Earth that exists, like it becomes so real to them. Like that's what I love about your story is it's so freaking powerful. Right? Yeah. Who else in your competition anywhere has the skill sets and the experience that you do?
Nobody. I love it. Yeah, no, that's the power of marrying these two concepts.
Oh, like I'm listening to you and I'm like, oh my gosh. And so we've interviewed like probably a dozen people now or so on this concept. And it's like, dude, I mean, you would think the most boring person in the world has no story. No, they do. Everybody's got a story. And when you roll it through, and then you're like, these are the skill sets they built at this point, and then they tell it, this is why I'm different. I mean, it is a thing of beauty.
Yeah.
And you know, and then you make people decide between whose story is better, you know, but then you start hedging in different aspects to the story about that, you know, like, okay, I'm going to compete against this team. I'm going to hedge these aspects of my story that are going to put me on a different level. Right. And the cool thing is you always do it from a place of complete honesty, complete truth. But there's so much to our development from the time we're born to the time that we're standing before that person in a listing presentation that we can deliver to them that makes us so unique. And I think your story is freaking awesome. Like,
thank you.
Yeah, I'm super pumped to continue our conversations because I know we talk so much and continue your story and then put it into the seller's guide and literally like take your confidence level and then marrying it with a storytelling ability. Like, I mean, good freaking luck to your competitors. I mean, we're already losing 7 out of 10 times from what you said, but like, I'm super excited to take this to where, I mean, maybe they win a half of a time out of 10, right? If that, I mean, this is incredible. You got a phenomenal story, man.
So the thing that's really cool, and I honestly just hadn't considered it, is to be able to go in and really connect with the person and talk about my story is just a game changer, to be real honest with you. So I'm excited to bring that into my presentation.
Because I mean, I just view you as being one of the most confident, get it done guys out there. And when you add that element of, I'm going to be vulnerable with you, Mr. Seller, right now by telling you my story.
Sure.
Like, even though you're going to tell it in obviously a really confident way, I mean, it has an element of emotion and human to you that it's like, oh, dude, this is like a human robot. Like,
I was going to use that word. It's funny because I think that I can get very robotic in some ways. And, you know, there are elements of my presentation as it is right now where, you know, I end up with talking about my family and showing a picture and connecting, but it never even occurred to me to go back and take the moment to differentiate myself by going deep into my own story, which I think that, I mean, I know that it will resonate. I think you're right. The vulnerability, I think it's a force multiplier. It's a game changer.
It's a game changer. So for like me, my story is completely different than yours. I mean, I did have some sales experience going into business, but never in a boiler room setting, right? Yeah. I mean, like my previous job celebrated mediocre levels of success compared to, you know, what you're doing and what you did in that industry. But like, I also was a teacher. And so there's elements to my story where I can naturally share my heart for people Like when that needs to come out, like for example, we were doing a role play today and they were talking about like, how do I know you're going to care? You're just a big team. Oh. And then boom, I'm like, hey, you know, honestly, I was a math teacher. Like I was making 40 grand a year just so I could love on kids. But at the point when they cut my pay from there, I couldn't make it work anymore. So I had to go get a job where I could really provide for my family. But like that heart and passion for people is still in me. And then I kind of roll through the process, right? So like there's times where I share almost all of my work history, times where I share just one job or one piece of one job, because there's elements that are going to show every aspect of who you are and how that relates to them emotionally, skill-wise, to the task that you're trying to accomplish.
Right.
And then you just...
Well, I mean, let's just... If we go back to what my original answer was, so what do you do different? And my response to that was almost an arrogant, not arrogant, but almost an...
confident, we'll say.
Yeah, everything. Well, I can still say everything, but you know, just so you know, and then dial it back into my story.
Yeah. And
I think at that point they're eating out of. I think they're eating out of my hand at the end of my listing presentation. They'll be eating out of both hands.
They'll be eating out of both hands. They're like, dude, this guy is two-dimensional.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and because what I find is there's a lot of people that have a really hard time getting to where you are in a confidence level. Right. And then there's other people that are wired like you and I are. And mine was a journey to become a little bit more emotional, I think, as yours is. Right. And so it's the standpoint of people are coming from two different sides of the spectrum. Some are naturally more emotional and soft, and they can easily tell their story. And then they need to progress towards being confident in their story. And there's other people that are obscene amounts of confidence, and they need to learn how to, you know, do some introspection, bring out their story and use it in a really, you know, powerful way.
Yeah, the power's in the vulnerability.
It's it. Especially when you're, so like, if you just get vulnerable, then they're like, dude, you're weak, you know,
right.
It's an emotional wreck. But when you have your level of confidence, right, or you have a high level of confidence, and then you show little specific bits of vulnerability, it's gorgeous. It's beautiful.
I love it.
Yeah, so awesome, man. Well, again, thanks so much for hopping on, and this was epic, and we'll just keep developing the storyline, and obviously I'm super stoked to get you your seller's guide and get you out there.
Awesome, I love it. Thank you, man.